Danhausen here to let you know that you are watching Dre41 Gaming. They do video games of some sort. Who knows? Danhausen doesn't. But you're very nice, very evil, do time. And if you do not watch this channel, you shall rue the day.
What's up, y'all? It is Dre41, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk podcast. I am here with my co-host, Ken Washington. What's going on?
How's it going, everyone?
And we are here with a very special guest. We are here for the lead developer for UPW. What's going on?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. This was something that I think I hit you up a while ago about to get you on the podcast. I'm very interested in what you got going on in regards to your game. The first thing I always like to ask any guest that is on the podcast is when you became a fan of professional wrestling, and what was something that really got you interested in it?
I mean, I've been a fan of wrestling my whole life. I think I was probably 5 when I started watching wrestling. Actually, my big brother, he was a fan before me, so he's probably the one that got me into it. My very first memory of watching wrestling and having it stick was Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, the barbershop scene.
Okay.
That was my very first memory that really stuck out.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. And, so I mean, like, you know, always asking like wrestling fans, like, it's always strange, like, what type of match or what type of, like, what they seen first to really get them into it. That's interesting. I never heard somebody say like a promo or anything like that was what really got them into it. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that was just going back, thinking of my earliest memory. That's my kind of earliest memory. I actually ended up going on to not just like wrestling, but I wanted to be a wrestler. That was my whole life for all my childhood. And it was probably if I was to tie it to a match, it was probably the 1995 Royal Rumble, with Shawn Michaels as well. That was the moment that kind of made me think, okay, I want to do that. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's parlay that into video games. What was the first wrestling video game you were into, and what do you consider like your top 3 favorite wrestling games?
I mean, the top 3. Is it unfair if I just pick all the AKI games?
No, that's not unfair at all.
Yeah. You know, I mean, obviously, No Mercy is probably number 1. Although later on in life, I sort of discovered the virtual pro wrestling, and that kind of probably, I don't know, that might be number 1 just because of just all the little extras that you get in there.
Oh.
I'm trying to think of wrestling games outside of those games, because that's maybe a bit unfair just to have them as my top 3. But yeah, I don't know. I never got into the Fire Pro games. I never had it really much of a chance to play them. So, but I hear from everyone that they're brilliant. You know, so that's something that I'd like to kind of get into at some point, is the Fire Pro games.
Okay, yeah, those have like a learning curve that are horrible. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Like, to actually play them, if you're just watching the matches, it's not too bad. But actually playing it took me about 3 weeks to really like get the controls down to where I was like, hey, this actually works. All right.
Yeah. It's all time based.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I've never played it, but the people who talk about it, they do talk about the AI system being so good, and I guess that's why people like to just set up matches and just let it run out, because the AI is so good.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, that game definitely holds it. Like, it holds its worth throughout the years. Like, people still play Fire Pro Returns from PlayStation 2, and that game came out early 2000s. So yeah, they definitely knew what they were doing when they developed that game. But let's get to the elephant in the room. The reason why we are all here today. We are talking about your game, UPW. And okay, so first and foremost, right, what made you want to develop this game?
I mean, I guess it came from, well, I was going to say it sort of came from a love of those AKI games. Okay. And not really having, for years I wanted an updated version of that, and we just never got it. And, you know, you think about all the stuff nowadays that we could have with those games, like online, like, well, one of the best things about those games was playing against your friend, because there's a lot of skill involved, and you just, I keep imagining what that experience would be like online with an online ranking system and all that. So I just always pined for one of those games to come back, and it just never happened. So, but that's actually not the reason I started making a wrestling game. I actually started making a 2D wrestling game a while ago that would, I guess, kind of be more sort of like WrestleFest and all this kind of stuff. But then I ended up getting into sort of discussions with a promotion called ICW, Insane Championship Wrestling. So I actually started out, I was going to be making a wrestling game for them. And so then it morphed. I started out making this 2D game for those guys, but then it kind of morphed into, I was like, no, we could make this a 3D game, and then that's when I started thinking about the AKI game, and I'm like, oh, we could just make an AKI clone, but have the ICW guys. So the game currently, Ultra Pro Wrestling, started off as an ICW game that it actually, it happens a lot, and like especially with indie games, it all kind of fell apart at some stage. So and then I went off and I made a couple of other games, and then eventually I saw I'd done all this work for this wrestling game that was now just sitting there. And so I thought, do you know what, I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to go back. It doesn't matter if I can't do it with a promotion and with wrestlers that people know. I'll just make, I'll just make up characters. And because it's really it's the game engine that's the kind of the selling point. It's the game engine that I want out of a wrestling game, that AKI game engine. It doesn't really matter to me if it's real characters or not, and if the creator wrestlers are that good, then you can always just make your own versions of the wrestlers that we want to see in that game.
Yeah, and that's very true, because I did see on some of your posts, especially with the RVD and showing off, the ECW pay-per-views. That's really cool that early in development that you already have those ideas to give the community the power to create what they want in the game. That's very cool. Was that always something that you intentionally wanted in the game, or was it just something you were playing around with and got to?
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to share those pictures because I don't want people thinking that I'm just, hey, look at what we can't have kind of thing. But no, the idea is that we would have some sort of community creations thing, and eventually people would be able to make their own ECW logos and things like that and put it in the game. So I thought I want to just show people this is what it's not just some generic wrestling game with guy in red tights versus guy in blue tights.
Right.
We're going to be able to use this engine to make whatever company we want, all that stuff. And my idea for the although it's going to be fictional characters, the idea for the career mode is that you will actually play out starting in the 80s, going through the 90s, going through all the different, historical parts, and being able to jump ship from different companies, things like that. So in order to plan that all out, you have to, although it's fictional characters, you have to have sort of prototypes. There's going to be like a character who his storyline is very much similar to maybe like The Undertaker or something, and then there'll be someone else who their storyline, but then also want the storylines to be dynamic. So the fun part for me when I'm thinking about creating this career mode is, what would happen if, because you can go and we'll change all the names, but when you play the game, you can change the names of your guys to whoever they represent in real life. And so the idea is, what would happen if The Undertaker went to WCW in 1994, it's sort of trying to imagine what that would look like. And so the career mode's the intention for the career mode is to be very dynamic that way, where, wrestlers have their contracts, they have their friends, they have their rivalries, and all that kind of carries with them where they go, and it all sort of bounces off each other and creates like a unique story out of that.
Oh, okay. And another thing that you did showcase on your social media as well as your YouTube channel was the amount of matches that you already have within the game. So that goes, before I get too deep into that, how long have you been developing this game?
I guess, it started off when I was with ICW. That was at least 5 years ago.
Oh wow.
So I think, oh God, I don't know. Maybe in total I've been developing this game about 7 years, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not been 7 years nonstop. It was 7 years ago, and it was a couple of years spent developing some of the mechanics. Actually, when I was with ICW, a lot of it was spent developing like the look of the characters and things like that. And that's all stuff that now I can't use in the game, or that the style of the game has changed as well. It was a more realistic style with that game as well. So there is a chunk of that is now kind of wasted time that I can't use. But there was a lot of the building blocks, for, the menu systems and the Creator Wrestler that was being developed at that time as well. But yeah, I took a few years out. Thought, because the other thing as well is there was no money involved with ICW. I was doing it all off my own back kind of thing. So yeah, it got to the point I was like, okay, I need to go and make a bit of money somewhere doing something just now. So did that, and then I came back and I was like, right, okay, now I can focus. Now I can get back on this wrestling game, and I'll just make up characters, and that's what it'll be.
Yeah, no, and see, and the reason why I asked that is because you're pumping out so much content in regards to the game. It was just like, man, like this guy is on 100 cylinders right now, going at it.
Yeah. No, I mean, to be fair, I am working my ass off. I am like, it's I wake up 9 o'clock in the morning, and although I will have break, like I've got a couple of kids, so I can't just work straight, but. I'll have breaks in between, but a lot of times I won't go to bed until like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm back up at 9, and so I'm just like, I'm working solid. So yeah.
Yeah. No,
what engine are you using for the game?
What? Sorry.
What engine are you using for the game?
So it is the Unity engine, which I know puts a lot of people off. A lot of people think, oh, why are you not using Unreal? This game started out on Unity, and so it's just always kind of stayed there. I think maybe at some point, if I'm in a better position to do it, I could migrate stuff over to Unreal if enough people want it to be on Unreal. But as of right now, it's on the Unity engine. And the other thing as well is that Unreal is good for super realistic graphics, like the ray tracing, all that kind of stuff. But because this game's a sort of stylized game, there's not much that Unreal has that Unity doesn't have in that area.
Okay.
If I was going for hyper realistic ray tracing kind of stuff, then Unreal would be the better option.
Yeah, in my opinion, it never, like, when people always look at games and they always say, oh, well, the graphics, it's like, do you enjoy playing? That's the most important part. Growing up playing Nintendo and Sega, those games didn't look great, but we played them and we enjoyed them. And I feel like people would rather have this weird trade-off of, I'd rather have the game look good and play like garbage as opposed to the game being fun first.
So 2K22 is what he basically just...
Yeah. I mean, I even felt that back in the day with the SmackDown games. The SmackDown games were coming out, and there were a lot of my friends who had never played the No Mercy games, but they loved the SmackDown games. And fair enough, they had better graphics, all that kind of stuff. But I'm pointing at, but the engine here is much better. The gameplay is much better. And so, but that's another thing. 20 years later, however long it's been, I can't get out of my head the idea of a No Mercy or Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 with updated graphics, just updated everything. It'd be brilliant. So
yeah, definitely.
That's it.
Right.
And I'm not saying that my graphics are going to be on par with it's an indie game, so if they're better than the graphics in No Mercy, I'm happy with that. It's not going to be Fortnite or I don't know whatever the
Right.
It's not like it doesn't look bad to me as it is right now. Like I got the vibe of the N64 games when I started looking at it, which are some of my favorite. I think all three of mine are actually the AKI games as of recently, since that guy over there he introduced me last weekend. So but yeah, I think that it looks good as it is, and if that engine is the one that will help out, because the ultra realistic does kind of get old, especially when they just kind of sacrifice so much for it.
Yeah, because all the games start looking the same. There's no real the game doesn't have a character to it.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons actually that I wanted to make it sort of stylized was because not so much now. Now the new WWE games, if you create a character, they look pretty good. But there was a time where if you create a character in the WWE game, he stands out like he's a very obvious creative character. And so one of the things with the AKI games, because the graphics aren't as scaled up as the WWE games, if you create a guy, he pretty looks like if you create Bret Hart, from a distance, like it looks like Bret Hart. It looks like he could have been in the game just as much as everyone else, and especially with the modding community with the new textures and stuff like that. Like they fit right into the game, like they could have been put there by the developers. But whereas like if you go for hyper realistic, it's so hard to get it looking like they belong in the game. They stick out. So I thought, well, if we go for a stylized look, then all the created characters look like they fit in the game. None of them will really stand out as being a created character,
Right. And another aspect of your game that I was really paying a lot of attention to, I think I spoke about it like real quickly, was the game modes that you have in the video. And I mean, that's a great selection of game modes that you have. Now, do you have anything additional more planned for the future that you haven't shown off yet, without no spoilers at all?
Well, whenever I'm trying to think what I've actually put out there already as being things that are in the game, because I sometimes lose track. So I don't think I've mentioned that there'll be a create a championship that you sort of assign. You kind of need that anyway, because the story mode is. I'll give you an example. So like the AKI games, one thing that I thought was awesome that game did that not a lot of other games that I can think of have ever done. If you change the costume of one of your characters, it changes the costume in the intro. So it's like you're changing the entire game based on you can make it whatever. So the idea is if the story mode should kind of be the same way. So if you change a promotion or create a belt for a promotion, that should show up in the story mode as well. So the story mode is kind of your world that you're creating. So the story mode will be dynamic, but it's based off of all elements that you've made. So you could go in and delete all the promotions that come with the game, and just create a bunch of your own promotions, designate where their regions are, assign them belts. You'll assign them a sort of starting capital, because the promotions will be able to grow as well. They'll be able to grow and scale up and scale down. So the create a championship as a mode I don't think I've said anything about before. But yeah, I think as well I sometimes need to pull myself back because I've got so many ideas and I'm like no we need to be like, someone messaged me the other day asking about a GM mode and I'm like yeah I want to do it, but I can't have too much stuff going on, and especially the more stuff you add then the longer it's going to take before the game's finished. So the idea is to have a certain amount of features that we'll be able to launch with, and then over time, year after year, I'll just keep adding to the game, adding features. I don't like the idea of, hey, we created a new costume, give us money to download it. I don't like that. I just want the game, or even sequels. Now, I'll probably have to, if the game does well, I'll probably have to release a sequel at one point. Yeah. I don't like that. I don't want to do that. I want it just to be this one game that's out there. Yeah, they did it kind of recently with the Hitman series. They renamed it. It was just Hitman, and there wasn't going to be sequels. It was just going to be this one game that the developers would keep adding content to, and I love the idea. So that's kind of my goal for this game, is just it's one game, one time purchase. That's it, and I'll just keep adding as much as I can to it over time. So eventually, further down the line, a GM mode, more backstage areas. We'll just add content, more costumes, more whatever, So, but on release, there has to be sort of not everything all at once kind of thing.
Okay, no, and that makes sense too. I mean, just taking your time with it and making sure the product that you put out is the best product it can be, and then updating it periodically. We don't need a franchise that comes out every year, because then you rush in the product and then you lose quality after a certain amount of times. But yeah.
So I was just going to say, I actually don't really play the WWE games, and so I actually had to ask people, like, when you create, because I see lots of people, they spend so much time creating characters for WWE 2K22, and so 2K23's come out, and I'm like, so can you just transfer your characters over, or you have to start from scratch? They're like, you start from scratch. I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah.
every year you have to do that. Oh, God.
Yeah. Craziness. But talk to me about the roster. Now you did say that you had to basically start from scratch and make a original roster. What's the number, if you can say, what would you want? What's your good number of characters that you want to have in the game?
Well, I'm not actually sure what the launch number is going to be, but there has to be enough characters to sustain a certain for the career mode, to sustain like a base career mode, to sustain a certain number of promotions, have a certain number of characters. I would say there'd probably be, I'd say there'd be at least 100 different characters launch. But another idea as well is there shouldn't really, I've not fully tested this, maybe there's a reason that games don't do it, but right now, if you want to create a character, you need a character slot, and you only get so many character slots. I'm not sure why you can't just have like however much storage space you have on your device, just fill that up. I don't know. I don't know why that isn't a thing. Now I'm saying that, but I know other games don't do that. So I hope I don't put that out there, and then I run into a reason why that's not possible. But
Fire Pro kinda does it. So if you have like the one I have for the computer, like is based more off of your space, so I can keep creating, they call them edits, so I can keep creating edits until I run out of computer space.
Awesome.
It bolsts it up, but yeah, as long as I have the space, I'm able to make them. So I think that's, as far as I know, that's the only one that does anything like that. So for yours to do that'll be good in my book.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's possible, and I don't see a reason why. The only thing that makes me think it's not possible is because the WWE games don't do it. But if Fire Pro does it, then yeah, it should be fine. It shouldn't be an issue. So I'm thinking maybe promotions, there might be a limit on that, just because of the way the career mode works. The promotions are kind of assigned around regions. So there may be a cap on that just because of how that works. But there's also a timeline as well. So there's promotions, you sort of decide when your promotion starts, and your promotion could end. Your promotion could end in like 1996, and then that space becomes available. So then like 1998, that region could become, I don't know, Ring of Honor or something like further down the line. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so I'm sorry. You were saying?
Is there going to be like a? Is it going to be like a like a 24? Like it just, the career mode keeps going, or will it have like a timeline? Like it has to stop at a certain point. Well,
so the career mode's kind of going to have an AI sort of thing to it, which makes it, it's not going to be typical script. Like, okay, this happens, this part in the career mode, you're involved in a storyline with whatever. Like, storylines will kind of be generated on the fly from a list of types of storylines, but there's no real reason for it to end, because it just works kind of dynamically. Like whatever is going on in the world in the career mode, that prompts other events. So yeah, there's no real reason for it to, obviously we'll get to like 2030 and you'll be like, I don't remember this happening, but yeah.
Okay, so you were speaking about, like, your enjoyment of the Aki games. Now within the Aki games and the story mode themselves, they have branching storylines. Is that something that you are interested in possibly implementing in your game, or do you have a different idea?
Yeah, well, it was obviously anything I'm doing with this game, I first look at the AKI game, because I'm not just trying to make a game that's kind of similar to that. I'm trying to make a game from the perspective of the developers who made that game. So even like anytime I want to introduce a new move, I'm looking at the move and thinking, how would the AKI guys have done this? How would it have looked if it was made by those developers? So yeah, the career mode, the storylines, I look at that first. The problem is though with the branching storylines like that, on the guy, they all have to be sort of pre-written before, so that it will be branching in the sense that it's up to you whether or not you want to, a situation gets presented to you, and so if you end up, I'm trying to think of an example, like if you're in a tag team and you end up double crossing your tag team partner, so that will branch off into then your career will kind of go in a different direction than it otherwise would have. But it's not necessarily set that, oh, because you did that, now we're going to trigger this cutscene where, someone else comes up to you and now they want to be attacked. Like it's very on the fly, sort of based on lots of different situations in that promotion at that time, how much money the promotion has, lots of different factors go into what the next event happens. So essentially, the idea is that every single time you play the career mode, it's a completely different experience every single time, because it's based off of so many different factors going on. But then it's also not a script that's written out. It's dynamic. It's this happened, so this happened, but it might not have happened because of that happened.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, a bit confused.
And that makes sense. That definitely makes sense in regards to the story itself. But another thing I've seen on one of your videos where it was a Survivor Series type of match, 5-on-5. How does that work in game? And is there have you perfected it to where it's just as smooth as playing 1-on-1 matches, or how would we expect to play that?
So what I did was I basically loaded in a bunch of guys, had them all animating, had them all rigged up, and it seems to be fine. So I also need to get into, I haven't made referee mechanics yet, so there's not another referee character there. But yeah, it's a weird one as well, because it can be running fine on the computer, and then who knows, maybe once we port it to the Switch or something, we might run into problems that might come up with it's kind of dropping frame rate here, so we'd have to go back and check. So there's a lot of stuff this is what we hope to have happen. There shouldn't be any problem. It should be smooth. If it turns out not to be, then we'll just have to rework it and make it work. I mean, you look at the Dickies Wrestling Revolution, and they've got 50 guys on screen at one time, and it's fine. So I think that's another reason as well to sort of look back at those AKI games where you could only have 4 guys on screen at one time. That the technology's moved on so much that's another thought that comes to mind is can you imagine a Royal Rumble on those AKI games, but with no breaks in between? It's just full on 30 guys in the ring. It would be magical.
That would be crazy. But another aspect, moves. That's a big thing in any wrestling game. What is the process like in that? What are you looking forward to in regards to the moves? Is it going to be something deep, or are you going more of the simplistic route?
Again, it's just looking back to the AKI games, seeing what they did, but also not trying to just carbon copy those moves completely. A lot of people are asking about create a move and all that stuff, which it's very difficult to do that. But one thing I do sort of think about is, so with the AKI games, you had lots of different positions from which you could do moves from. So of course you've got front lock up, that's a position you can do moves from, back lock up, whatever. So if you then incorporate, well, what if the headlock, rather than that, if you do a headlock in the AKI games, he wrenches him a couple of times and then punches him. So I'm like, well, what if that's another position you can do moves from? So he does the headlock, and then from there, you push down an A, you might do a drop hold, or you push up an A, you might do something else from that. Or if the guy reverses it from that position, it leads to different things. So then you think, you break it down like that, and then there's there's lots of different little positions, like a front face lock. From there, you can turn into a suplex, you can turn into a DDT, depending on if you push up or down. It's just, there's so many different positions from which you'd be able to do different moves from. So then I started thinking, maybe we could create a move from basically in the character creator. You can create the move by just setting up what the positions are, whether or not, let's say you put the guy in between your legs, and then from there that's like a block of your created move. and then from there you could do a taunt. So he's between your legs, but part of the move is you do the Razor Ramon. You've done that in the Create a Wrestler rather than that's just a move that's sitting there. Or you go to do a suplex and you say, I'm going to put a taunt in here. That's another, an addition to that move. And then you pick them up, and then you start thinking, well, what if when you pick them up, should it be up to you to then drop them, or should we be able to walk around? It starts getting a bit, there's too much, there's too many options. So then you kind of have to reel it back in and go, no, okay, let's just do the suplex. Let's just not think about that just now. Maybe in a further edition. But
So in regards to like the features that you do have set for this game, I do see a lot of wrestling game modes that you do have in there. But let's also talk about possibly expanding where the fights take place. Is there going to be possibly backstage? Is there going to be different areas in which you can have these matches?
Yeah, there will be a backstage, and primarily because the career mode, that is going to be the hub of the career mode is going to be backstage. So when you're backstage, that's where if you decide that you're fed up with the promotion that you're in, you can move to another promotion. All that's done backstage. If you decide you're ready for your match, that's done backstage. If you decide that you want to change your costume, that's done backstage. So when you first start the career mode, anytime you start the career mode, anytime you put the game, load it up, put the game in, like it's,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Load the cartridge.
Yeah, load the cartridge, put the game in. Load it up, and you will start the career mode in the backstage area. And so from there, each room will have its own sort of function. So obviously the locker room will be where you change your attire. The gorilla position is where you decide that, okay, the match that you're scheduled for tonight, you're going to initiate, you're going to start that match. So yeah, there'll be lots of different areas that have sort of reasons for them being areas. And then of course, because we're building all that out anyway, it's like, oh well, of course you're going to be able to, during the match, take it backstage and wrestle in those parts as well.
Okay, all right. So here's what I want to do. I want to go into rapid fire questions. Now you could say yes, no, or no comment, and that's fine. All right. First one, commentary.
No.
Okay. Second one, intergender matches.
Yes.
Okay. Blood.
Yes.
Ranking system, whether in career mode or if possibly online somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one so this one is and this is all based on how this game is developed, but facial animations.
Yes.
Okay. As far as Create a Wrestler goes, you said that you wanted to, so you kind of answered that one already, but the one where it's like, based on memory, how many you can create. So, but let's say if there was a cap, let's say, would it be in the 3 digits?
If there was a cap?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably. I think so.
All right. And as far as different promotions, are we talking about ones from around the world? Made up, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Hey, that's my rapid questions, Ken.
I'm good with those.
Hey, okay. Well, yeah, that's our time here. I definitely appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna keep watching everything you do.
Absolutely.
I'm very intrigued about this game. Thank you very much for being a guest on, and yeah, we look forward to see what you have coming out.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem.
I'll be sharing this everywhere.
Absolutely. I'll send you the link first. You'll see it. But
yeah,
thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you're new. Catch you guys on the next episode later. All right. Talk to you later.
Yeah, catch you later too. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for being on. See you later.
Yeah, see ya.